It was raining, so the basketball court was all wet, so we had to go over to a nearby LAN cafe, and the guy was like, oh, we've got this new mod that seems very popular overseas, it's called Counter-Strike, you guys want to try it? So we tried it. Immediately you fell in love with the game because it was so easy to pick up. You just run around, shoot people, right? It wasn't that hard. And we loved it. My team and all of that, I was like, yeah, sure. At that point in time, there was this team called Grudge Bringers. They were by far one of the best and upcoming teams in the country, and they had many different divisions. So I think I started like the third division, one of the weakest teams, and we played. And you would slowly make your way up. And every time I came back, of course, when I went back to Australia, I would play there as well. And I loved it. I just loved competing. I enjoyed the competition. I enjoyed going on, forums and finding out ways to get better. I loved that. It was fun for me. And then finally, I came back to Singapore, and I got good enough to a point where they were like, you want to, play in one of those big events? We did. We placed pretty well. And that's when I found out that they actually had big major tournaments for this. This was the biggest one at the time, was called the Cyber Athlete Professional League. Strangely enough, that brand is actually now owned by a Singaporean company. After it kind of closed down, the brand name got bought over by a Singaporean company. We managed to cobble together the money. We sent 2 teams to Dallas to compete in this event. And it was our first ever event. I think out of 128 teams, we came in like 13 or something like that. I decided that I wanted to form a team, a professional team. By this time I was a lot older. We set up a company, Team Titans Esports. Titans Esports was a private limited company, and we were very determined to make it a business. We were very determined that all players would get paid full-on salaries. And everybody, for many years, we just worked at it like, after school, after work, we would just basically pile it on, and we would just be at training from like 6 to 1 a.m. in the morning, go home, get some sleep. When I think about it now, it helped to build a lot of character. We realized that our weekends were not our own. We had to just do that because we loved it, and we weren't getting paid for it, not even $1 till like many years later. Sure, when we did get paid, it was pretty decent, and we were very happy. We were like, I can't believe I'm making this much money at this age at that time. The advent of technology has basically allowed anybody to compete in an international level esport. Let's just use soccer in Singapore as an example. We used to have, the Malaysia Cup heyday. I remember my dad taking me to games and driving up to Sabah and all these different places. I used to follow the team. I loved it because you had a national team that, you could get behind and that you were proud to call the home team. You look at football these days, one reason why nobody wants to watch it anymore is because the level of competition, first of all, is abysmal. The production value of our local football league is also terrible. And the reason why it is terrible is because we're talking about a sport that isn't as easy to pick up anymore. Coming home, turning on your computer and starting something is a lot easier than coming home or bringing your boots to work and then arranging with friends to meet somewhere to play. With this, you go online and your friends are already there. Even if your friends are not there, you have pickup games with strangers, and just getting into the sport is so much more accessible, right? You're not afraid. A shy kid who loves to play football, for example, but he doesn't really have any friends in his neighborhood who wants to play. He has to go downstairs. He has that awkward like, hey, can I join you guys? Or like, he has to find that team. With this, you don't have it anymore. You've got that, you've got internet to facilitate all these things for you. Sometimes you don't even have to talk to anybody. You go online, there are programs that find games for you. You enter these games, you make friends, you're a bit more social. Getting into the sport, first of all, is way easier. Number 2, people can watch it for free very often. And because of that, many companies realize that it is in their interest to increase the production quality of these events. So they come in with all these brilliant halftime shows, little like roundups of the week, just like what you have for the English Premier League or the NBA. They have that for esports. Even in the Asian region, this is something that we've had football in Singapore for years and years and years. You still don't have these really well curated local football, ASEAN football shows. They're just not as interesting as the content that these guys produce, because they're able to pull content from all these different YouTubers or Twitch streamers. There's so many different content sources that companies can go out and say, hey, I want to buy your content, I want to buy your content. And if you're like a 17-year-old kid who has produced some decent content and somebody throws $10,000 to you, you're going to feel like you want to go out there and make more of this content. So that means more competition, means better content, which means providers have more to choose from, which means spectators like me and other esports fans have more to look forward to. You now have a platform for sponsors to come in and say, I want my product shown in this time for X amount of time, my advert to be in this show, and now you have a bidding war. This guy says, I'll pay $1 million for my halftime show to be shown at this particular match because the two biggest teams in the world are playing. Sound familiar to you? Because that's exactly what it's like in every sport in the world. The NFL, World Cup, everybody's vying for that, that top spot, that prime advertising space. That is how this is the reason why most companies want to get into esports, because they realize that all of a sudden we've got this huge demographic that is really now getting into esports, and we're still at its infancy. Even though we're talking a huge industry, we're still at its infancy, and it is the number one way that everybody wants to get in. Produce content, get people to like the content, sponsors come in, they want to use your content or they hire you to produce content for them, and then show it during these. These days though, everybody believes in this overnight success thing. And that has actually been one of the biggest barriers to esports success. Say in Singapore, for example, where we are so technologically savvy, we have all the latest gadgets, we're always in the know when it comes to what's good and new out there. Everybody doesn't realize every success story you see, every esports team, every big company, there's that 10-15 years of hard work, or even 5-6 years of hard work that they've put in before they became these overnight successes. You might have only heard about them today, but I guarantee you they were doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff years before you've even heard of them, years before they were good. Everyone has lost so many times. I've lost so many tournaments in my time before winning all the big ones and making that small name for myself back then. These days though, everybody just wants the quick money, the salary, the what can you give me?